Hello everybody, welcome to the GMG review. Today we're taking a look at Mortal Enemies for Frostgrave 2nd Edition. This is Joe McCullough's most recent expansion, upcoming expansion for Frostgrave 2nd Edition, and I'm actually pretty excited about this because one of the things that I've been missing in the last little while is a Frostgrave opponent, and this book is going to give me one. Now, it's not a shout out for someone to come and immediately come play Frostgrave with me. I have 17,000 other games that I need to also play. But this book is going to give me the opportunity to forge my own mortal enemy with Owen now to 2,500 miles away, like something like that, 3,000 kilometers. In Calgary, of course, my original Frostgrave opponent and the dastardly Wizard Red are not here to plague me anymore. And this book is going to allow me to create my own nemesis and then play through a series of 5, either linked or just individually randomly generated solo scenarios against that nemesis. The nemesis would be different every single time, and there's an entire system for creating a bad guy, launching them into a campaign with you, and then at the end of it all, having them attack your base with expanded rules for wizard eyes, exploding runes, doors, traps, all kinds of extra stuff. You have to defend yourself, basically, when it's all over. So this is a full color, how many pages, Ash? These are the things you should probably look up. 94-page book. It has its own stat sheet for the mortal enemy itself and begins with creating your mortal enemy and why would you want to do it? Well, the idea here is you could include this in other games, although it would drastically like whack out the balance of a head-to-head game with Frostgrave. But this one is going to allow you to play basically as like an almost, if you're going to use Joe's other titles, almost a Rangers of Shadow Deep style experience, but procedurally generated. So as opposed to having the same story every time, the bad guy in this could be like a lot of things. There's a huge table. On a 1 to 10, it's humanoids. It's like a roughly human, elf, dwarf, whatever style creature. But there are 10 other options of a rangifer, a construct, a demon could be after you, a minotaur, a werewolf, a wraith, a vampire, a lich, a queen spider matriarch, or a fire giant. And any of those things have like their core block of stat lines and will come after you. Now, what's cool is to throw in a little bit more random stuff in the mix. There's a stat modification table exactly after that. So first you roll to see what your character is going to be or your nemesis is going to be. And then your mortal enemy will get its own tweak. So they're never always going to be the same twice. And even the powerful ones could be slightly less powerful. And even the weaker ones could be a bit more powerful because another D20 table. At the beginning, they might get like +1 will, +1 fight, and -1 armor. But at the very tippy top, they get +1 move, +2 fight, +1 armor, +2 health, and +2 will. So you'd have a fire giant, if you rolled double 20s for this, you'd have a fire giant that's movement 9, fight +6, range plus nothing, +15 armor. With 24 health and +6 will. Every creature also has its own special rules based upon like its class and stuff like that. And then on top of that, they have a threat level, which is roughly commensurate to like your wizard level and would be used in game for like balancing things out when you like compare wizard levels and stuff like that when you're playing. So once you determine that stuff, you get to determine 2 random range attacks because all of these creatures are magical. So the idea is that they would be rival wizards of whatever the monster type is too. So like you could have a construct wizard. Demons might have magical powers. Fire giants might have magical powers. They're going to get to also do that, or because it's Frostgrave, you could imagine that the construct is instead of it's doing scatter shot, it has like some kind of magical shotgun arm. However you want to envision it, but they work the same. So another D20, and you can get things like range attacks like Curse, Decay, Furious Quill, Grenade, Imp, Scattershot, Stealth Heal, Mind Control. And a few of these are new. You also get a utility spell, 2 of them. And out of game spells as well. And they've the ones that didn't make a lot of sense from the core rulebook for a non-player like mortal enemy just become automatic in and out of the games. So things like the Affliction doll, you're basically making a voodoo doll of you so that it comes after you and does terrible things on you during the game. Mystical Mind Spike, which will attack a wizard, make them forget a random spell. Or Rat Scent, the caster selects one enemy warband model. After the warband is deployed at the start of the game, the casters place 1 giant rat anywhere in the table, so it's exactly 6 from the nearest member. Basically, your whole warband stinks like rats, and a random warband member gets attacked by a rat every game. And then also things like witch spells like Sores and Boils, you can be afflicted by stuff. Or Thought Plague, which makes your will rolls all -3 if they're against a casting roll. Just fun little things like that. They get special abilities, like you can basically get like a random one like Burrowing or Ethereal, immune to critical hits, immune to normal weapons. They can be very scary. And they also get some cool magical equipment, of which there are some unique ones in here, like balls of smoke, glimmer fields, life giver belts, a luck star. The luck star gets 1 in any combat roll, including rolling against shooting attacks. It must reroll and take the second dice roll. So basically, you can reroll all your 1s with a luck star. I want a luck star, Joe. Where's my luck star? Sean gave me a luck star in Rangers. So from there, after you get your special abilities, then you roll for the gang. And the gang will be fixed for the campaign, but they can also still make injury rolls and stuff like that. But you could start with everything from like 2 thieves, 2 treasure hunters, and a marksman, or 4 skeletons and a vampire. There's crazy stuff in here that they could start with. And that's kind of like the soup and nuts of this. Like, there's gonna be a main like antagonist character. It's gonna have some Goombas that come along with it. You roll that up and randomly generate to see what it's gonna be, and then you dive in, and you actually start playing a campaign. And the campaign is really fun because you basically are gonna have the mortal enemy arrive. It's gonna cast its out of game spells. There's gonna be random deployment because there's random deployment rules too, and then everybody gets a motivation. So the warband's gonna have a motivation for the game. And it's basically, who are they after? Like, are they after enemy wizards, the apprentice, enemy soldiers carrying treasure tokens, unclaimed treasure tokens, or enemy soldiers? And what this means is you don't have dumb monsters in the solo game, because typically what happens is whatever they can see, they just run towards in Frostgrave. In this, the models will have different types of motivations, and they'll scatter after things. So they're a little smarter than the standard sort of like Frostgrave AI. If there's nothing that qualifies, then they just divert to the Frostgrave AI. And then there's a priority list, just like the other stuff. Like, are you in combat? Then you attack somebody in line of sight. You might cast something. Is there a target for the mortal enemy's utility spells? Then yes, and then movements afterwards. The one big thing though is that the actual enemy, like the mortal enemy, they have a special rule where, unlike wizards, what makes them so dangerous is they can do, they don't have to do a movement action during their activation. They could do a fight action and a shoot action, or a fight action and a cast action. They just can't do the same action twice. So they're a little more versatile, which is cool, because one of the things we found in the solo rules for Frostgrave in general is when you know they have to do X or Y in order, you can gamify it. In this case, because they can do anything out of order, and it's whatever their advantage is, then they're going to be a little less dumb and a little harder to manipulate, basically based on the AI, which I really like. And then they've got their own like campaign system where they have their own death result rolls, so they're harder to kill. And it incorporates the extra damage. So instead of having like a dice roll that results in roll in the separate injury table, they incorporate the injury table results in it. So like, if you roll a 1, you're dead. If you roll a 8, then psychological scars, they get a -1 will. So you can actually chip off stats as the campaign goes forward, which is kind of cool. Then they also level up, which I think is great. You have to keep track of their success because they have their own advancement table. And when they advance, they can get like bonus health, bonus move, bonus will, and then gang advancement too. You get to add, as their gang advances, you get to add gang members to their gang, which is very funny. So they grow as you grow, which is cool, but they also can take attrition. And I think that's a really clever, simple mechanic for making it so that you don't have to have the story sort of like spoon fed every time. That's one of the things that solo and cooperative games can kind of fall into sometimes, where they're episodic. You have bottle episodes each time. Stuff might carry forward for a little while, but doesn't carry forward forever, because you couldn't write that way. You couldn't write like I think the most vast example that I can think of is in the sorcery books by Steve Jackson, Ian Livingston, which is like these choose your own adventure books. Stuff that happened in book 1 could affect book 4, which was a wild bit of writing for them. But in this, you're going to have that evolving warband coming after you every game, which means that their own, like, you're just managing 2 warbands basically, but their own story is going to be just as interesting as your story. And it's not going to be the same every single time, because the antagonist is going to be different. Their crew is going to be different. Like, I feel like it has a lot of longevity. I think our scenarios, they're all Frostgrave scenarios. There's an ethereal circle, lair of the Praclicor. You're making up words again, Joe. He just does it, so he makes me say them. Juggernaut, which I just like saying. I know you didn't make that one up. Drop a building on them is what one of it's called, because you just go try and kill them by dropping a building on them. And then the last section is base assaults. And this is where in Frostgrave, the base building is kind of, it's like it exists as a rule, but it's just kind of an abstract, like it's like where you go back at night after the game over. It's basically the pause screen in between games of Frostgrave. In this, it's a real place that you could end up being tracked back to by your mortal enemy, and then you play a base assault, where not only does he have his crew with him, there's a bunch of random extra Goombas he's hired, and you get a bunch of defenses in the form of like wizard eyes. You can cast additional spells through, like you have like security cameras almost. And then also exploding runes to lay traps, doors, all kinds of like extra gizmos. And then you have to divide up your warband, of course, to give yourself like a disadvantage and not make it so easy to do. You can also play this one competitively, which was cool. So he wrote it in such a way that you're not only playing it through this solo thing, but it's just fun as an idea for a mission. So you could just modify it if you're playing like a head-to-head mission of Frostgrave and play it just as well. There's some new base upgrades in there, like temporary constructs. So you have like little security guards, additional wizard eyes, explosive runes, reinforced doors, reinforced walls, and then a control shaker, which means that like controlled monsters and stuff like that might stop working. Shields, permanent draining words, teleport escape hatches, Aura of True Sight, and then a pile of new treasure, because there's a new treasure table for the stuff that was in the creation section, and then some other new stuff too. Joe just likes making new treasure, and I think that's for this game, that's really good. Bestiary wise, you get a corpse wrangler, an elemental bat, and a lot of these are from the scenarios, a murder jack, a praklikor, which is just a weird, like, I don't know, it seems like a Cthulhu monster sort of. And then new rules, partial immunity to normal damage, which is just half damage, random attacks, and then sharp talons, that is +1 damage. And that's it. So mortal enemies, what do I think? I stand for Joe a lot because I like his writing. I feel like this is the culmination of writing Frostgrave, writing Rangers, and then being like, I have a way of making something that's like that solo cooperative experience that I've done to the other side of this thing, but make it go forever. Like, I don't have to touch this afterwards, right? This is an infinite recipe book, basically, of cool short form campaigns that go like 5 missions, and the bad guy's different every single time. So you've got this like, and you could just kind of sub in or switch around like the core solo missions to change them up a little bit if you want to run the campaign more than once, or just play them again exactly the same way and change the monsters or reskin it somehow to make it feel slightly different and still have a like different experience, because the bad guy is going to change every single time. Their warband is going to change every single time. And how you like lay out your base defense and operate during that kind of like final mission is going to change every time too. So I think this is really impressive because he's done a good closed loop of create a random story. It's almost like it's improv. It's like improv solo co-op war game design. And it's like create random antagonist, set forth on adventure, antagonist changes and protagonist changes all through the course of the story. And at the end have like one big cool punch up where there's like a cinematic finish. And a cool sort of like, yeah, he comes to knock the gates down and like destroy your warband or steal your treasure or whatever when it's all done. My first instinct for this was to just do it with Batman and do like a rogues gallery thing. I was like, what other games could I use this for? Because this is a really clever system, and I feel like would make Joe, we need to write like a superhero game, like a street level superhero game that uses this same mechanic. We need to talk, because I would love to do. This feels like the best core mechanic for a superhero game, where you've got a new rogues gallery villain coming after you every single time. I instantly was just like, I love the idea of this, and what other things could I use this for? So yeah, but obviously Frostgrave is what I'll start with, and I'll run through it. And it's great because this is a solo thing, so I can do this anytime. I don't have to wait for somebody to do it with. And I have like 90% of what I need painted, although I don't have whatever that Cthulhu thing is. I got to figure out what I don't want to say it. What was it? He's going to make me say it 3 times. The praklikor. I gotta figure out what a praklikor is before we actually dive in and do this. So yeah, I'm really happy with it. I think for Frostgrave players looking for that experience, it's really good. And obviously, I'm more keyed into the solo co-op experience than most people, because one, I love any kind of thing I can do here in the studio where I come in and just work and make something neat and fun. Not because I like playing games by myself, because I like making stuff. So making stuff with a purpose and having that purpose like randomly generated. It's kind of like drawing from a prompt. You know what I mean? Where you've got like an Inktober thing, and every day there's a word as your prompt. You have to draw something. This feels like cool prompts for me, and I really like that. So there is a bit of like my own bias in this review. But I do think that for Joe's community in particular, if you're already into Frostgrave, you like making stuff, because Frostgrave is so much part of what's baked into it is like make your own warband, tell your own story, design your own narrative. Having a recipe book for those prompts, I think, is really, really cool. So I know I'm biased in this regard, but I do think that this fits his community really well. And regardless of people who want to play head to head, which you can still do, there's still content here for you. There's new treasure, there's new scenario with the base defense and stuff like that. And you are able to incorporate the mortal enemies as well. This is still just a great expansion for everybody. So there it is. Mortal Enemies. Thanks, Osprey, for sending a complimentary copy to review. And you'll see this in the near future. Luckily from Osprey, I got 2 cool things to work on, of which I have most of the miniatures already painted. So it's just a matter of me like sitting down and having the time to do it. And that'll be coming up soon. So I got this. And then next week, you see my review for some supernatural investigative horror. So big thanks for watching. We'll see you for more GMG reviews. Till next time, MASH. Happy gaming.